indicated last time that he would come up with an amendment, so we could explain that. And we will be dealing with that on the floor. We will not be addressing it. It's already in the Senate calendar.
Okay. I think it would be good if Mickey came up from LBA, and then I can help you go through this real quick. Today, and last fall when we were dealing with this, the first thing that came up is, can we loan communities money? Mickey, can you explain that one?
Sure. So under current law, there is a federal disaster loan program administered by the Department of Safety, which is designed to front dollars to cities and towns who are going through a disaster remediation, mitigation, until the FEMA reimbursement is received. And at that point, they would pay the state back. So that program exists. And if you recall, this committee had Senate Bill 409, Senator Prentice's bill, that modified that program slightly to make it a little bit more accessible. And that has since passed the full Senate and onto the House.
Then the second thing was, because some of us worked through a grant process before, we were trying to figure out what that grant process was limited to, and Mickey can explain that.
So Senate Bill 402, the underlying bill here, is relative to providing state assistance to help with the local match, the cost sharing for FEMA reimbursement. That is something that the state has not done since pre-2010, and I think that's what Senator Morse is referring to as far as a grant that would just be purely state aid to assist.
But you have to declare a disaster to be able to do that grant.
Yeah, that would be in match to a FEMA declared and approved reimbursement, correct, under a declared disaster.
So 402 is on the floor. We basically put interim study on it. We'd like to go to the floor and flip the interim study, go out to pass. And then I think the best way to address this is, so under the law that exists today, the governor would have to declare a disaster, and then he could grant, and then it goes to fiscal, and it goes to governor and council from funds not otherwise appropriated. What I think needs to happen is that part of the way it's dealt with in government get expanded so that if there's a FEMA application going to happen, the governor can do the same thing. He doesn't have to wait. He can go to fiscal, and he can go to governor and council and give a grant to a community out of funds not otherwise appropriated. I don't think we need to come up with whether it's 90-10 or 75-25 or 5 million is going into a bucket. I don't think any of that is necessary. What wasn't in place was the ability to be able to say, all right, let's put this through the body and see if they want to send $5 million to a community right now and solve a problem and let FEMA play itself out. And I think that's the part that, after working with Mickey and others in LBA, we said, let's find a way the governor can do this. And that's why we're proposing what we have in front of you today.
Any questions for Senator Moss? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to go into executive session. Moved by Senator Wiggins, seconded by Senator Guida. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries, and we are in executive session. First bill we'll take up today is Senate Bill 303.
Move on to pass.
Senator Hennessey moves ought to pass on Senate Bill 303. That's seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Discussion?
Is there an amendment coming on
I want to offer Amendment 1208S. there a second on this amendment?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, thank you. What this bill does, there are two parts to this bill. The first one provides reimbursement for sheriff's offices for prisoner custody and control. The second part adds on some pay increases for command staff within the Department of Safety. What the amendment does is to remove that second part, so we'll only be dealing with the sheriff's reimbursement. Understanding that the command staff were left out of pay increases that took place about 3 years ago. In talking with LBA and the Department of Safety, it's my understanding that these increases can be made within the current budget without further legislative action by the House and the Senate or the Fiscal Committee. So being that the Department of Safety could do this on their own, the amendment does take that part out of the bill, only dealing with the sheriff's reimbursement. Any questions on the amendment? Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You say that based on the information that you have now, they can do it on their own. So, what's the mechanism that they have in place to do this? Do they have to just go to the finance person in the department and make a recommendation that these changes be made? Or do they have to bring it someplace? Do they go to personnel? But, I mean, something's got to happen. There's got to be a mechanism by which this happens.
My understanding is that they can just, oh, thank you, Mike.
Process for the agencies to go.
Well, can you use the mic, please? And turn it on. There we go.
Right now, agencies would follow the process of going before the Joint Committee on Classification through the Department of Administration. The Department of Administrative Services submits that information to a consultant, and then that works its way through to the committee. So there's a process other than directly through legislation for agencies to look at changing the classification of unclassified positions. Classified positions would go through the Department of Administrative Services Division of Personnel, and they would review the position. There's a desk audit and a questionnaire where they determine what the appropriate labor grade for a position would be. So for the unclassified positions, there's one process, and for the classified, there's another. And agencies can participate in that process outside of legislation. And then it eventually works its way through the committee where that committee will put forward legislation to make the changes to the statute that includes the various classifications.
Okay, thank you. And my understanding right now is there is one unclassified position. And am I correct in understanding that the department normally might make a recommendation to employee classification to see if the salary is in the right range, but that they could go and just gave that increase themselves?
Not on their own. They do either need to go through that committee or through the Division of Personnel, depending on whether it's a classified position or an unclassified position.
Thank you. Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that having served on that joint employee classification committee with Senator Reagan, it takes a really long time because the committee has to meet, well, the department makes a recommendation, the committee has to review it, then they send it off to the consultants. The consultants then send it back, and the committee has to take a second look at it, so it takes, like, probably into the next year.
Further discussion? Motion before us is, ought to pass on the Amendment 1208S. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
No,
And the motion carries 5-2. Now on to the bill as amended. Senator Gaida moves ought to pass as amended. Is there a second? Second by Senator Hennessey. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. And is there someone that would like to take that out? Senator Hennessey, thank you. Moving on to Senate Bill 363.
I have a
Senator Gaida moves ought to pass on Senate Bill 363. Is there a second?
second.
Second by Senator Rosenwald. The bill is open for amendment. Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer Amendment 1233S. And very quickly, the bill remains the same, there's no cost, but this was an oversight in the number of people that could be included. There's that had to be taken care of, and the person is here from the retirement system that could tell about the little piece that we missed that had to be included in this. It doesn't change it at all. There's no effect on the cost of the legislation, but it just takes care of people who originally should have been included in the legislation, so it was an oversight in the way it was drafted. Is that Marty, Mr. Chairman?
So I think that what
I
you're
think it's
talking about
good.
is on line 22, where it used to say a previous minimum age of 45, and added to that is with a minimum of 20 years of credible service.
Yes, that's correct.
Any questions on this? Is there a second on this amendment? Second by Senator Gaida. Any further discussion on this? Any questions? Seeing none, we're voting on Amendment 1233S. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. Senator Gaida moves ought to pass as amended.
Second.
Second by Senator D'Alessandro. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it, motion carries. Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next bill we'll take up is Senate Bill 380.
Move on to pass.
Senator Gaida moves ought to pass, seconded by Senator Hennessey. And I think we had originally put this on, but as we amended it in the Senate, all the money was taken out, so this should be relatively easy. Gives a couple extra duties to the working group. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. You want to take that one out too, or what's that? Senator Gaida. Senate Bill 401. Senator Gaida moves ought to pass, seconded by Senator Hennessey. Discussion. Senator Morse.
Yep, I move amendment 1253S. And I'll let Senator Bradley speak to my amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator Bradley. Is there a second to, seconded by Senator Gaida? Senator Bradley, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me get the rate. Okay, so I filed Senate Bill 401 to try to rectify funding issues for Medicaid births in hospitals around the state of New Hampshire, but primarily in the critical access hospitals. I offered up to Senator Morse that if we moved either the Senate passed version of 401 or a potential amendment to another bill that you'll take up in a few minutes, that Senate Bill 401 could be turned into a property tax relief bill. So I'm happy to talk about the other part of Senate Bill 401 when we get to Senate Bill 430. So let me talk about, I think it's Amendment 1244, is that correct?
1253.
1253.
Okay, well, thank you. The March revenues, as I understand it, are going to be exceptionally strong. And because of that, and because of the actions that we've already taken in 3 other bills over the last couple of weeks, House Bill 398, which is assistance for local communities with septic systems, the bill that added $5 million for nursing homes, which helps county taxpayers, and Senator Hennessey's bill last week, Senate Bill 420, which dedicates, I think, about $25 million over the course of the next 2 years for extraordinary grants, hardship relief for the communities most in need for education funding. We're already off to a good start with much of the surplus that we have. Given that the March revenue numbers are going to be so strong, and we're still trying to determine what that full extent is, I would propose consideration of this amendment that does 3 things. It would return to cities and towns throughout New Hampshire $36 million for state bridge aid for municipal bridges. This is clearly one-time funding for infrastructure that is vitally important to the municipalities and all people in the state of New Hampshire, and it would accelerate those bridge projects that are already in the pipeline and ready to go for funding. And it's definitely, if we're supplanting municipal dollars, it is clearly property tax relief, and it's something that I think appropriately the surpluses that we're generating to continue on what we've done both in the budget in terms of property tax relief and the 3 bills I just cited is very helpful. The second part of the amendment is the $30 million proposed appropriation for state aid roads for betterment projects. Again, just like bridges, this is property tax relief. Will help those communities that have road repairs in the pipeline and will be a very good use of the surpluses that are being generated from, you know, a strong economy and many of the things that we've done for a number of years in this building to grow these surpluses. And lastly, the body worn dashboard camera fund. There was a proposal that the Senate rejected last week that was a $20 million appropriation. We included $1 million last year for law enforcement to have body worn cameras. My understanding is that most of, if not almost all of that money is yet to be expended by dedicating $1 million. That continues the process for body worn and dashboard cameras through what would be anticipated to be the next budget cycle when, depending on how this fund is working, it may well be appropriate to appropriate more money to it. But it certainly should be a significant addition to law enforcement to have the kind of cameras that I think we've all supported in the past. So that is the nuts and bolts of the amendment. When you get to Senate Bill 430, I'll talk about the balance of what was in 401.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. It's really more of a process question. The original underlying bill is about Medicaid rates for hospital birthing units, and this is about roads and bridges and cameras, and I'm just wondering how it's germane and doesn't need a public hearing.
Well, I think that when we have the opportunity to do these things, we should take advantage of it. The fact that we're having the significant revenue surpluses that we have and anticipate for March indicates that we should do something in the short run. Moving the Medicaid piece or some version of it into another bill makes sense to me. I offered up this bill as a result of, the fact that we could make that movement with a hospital portion into Senate Bill 430. If we do it this way, the House will have a public hearing. I think there'll be broad support for it, as I suspect the city of Nashua would be very supportive of this amount of money coming back to them, as would Manchester and Warren and Milford and Deerfield and Salem and the great Northwoods too. So ideally we'd like to have a public hearing, but there will be one in the House if we pass it in this form.
Follow up?
Thank you. So will we be taking a vote on the floor to suspend the rules on Thursday and not have a public hearing?
That's not a question I can answer, but it's certainly a question that can be put to the Senate President. I would hope that the necessary 2/3 would be there to suspend the rules and do this, because everybody in the state will benefit.
Thank you.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think all of the things Senator Bradley has said are true. We're going to $36 million here, $30 million here, and another $1 million here. But what about the reimbursement rates for the hospitals? Where does that stand? I mean, we know that there's a need for that item. I mean, it passed the committee on the consent calendar with a not to pass vote. So are we neglecting that item, which was, by the way, your bill?
Yes, it was, which is why I offered it up, because it was my bill.
Yeah.
And
you must have thought it was a
at
good
least
idea.
some portion of that bill, I hope, in its wisdom, this committee will put in Senate Bill 430. When you get to Senate Bill 430, if you bring me back, I'll advocate for the entire amount, because I do think it's necessary. There are other appropriations in Senate Bill 430. The department is here to talk about it. I worked with Henry Lippman on that. I think that it's necessary, but if in the wisdom of the Finance Committee, the other alternative is for the department to come in with a plan that would be funded in the next budget for these enhanced services for Medicaid deliveries, then I would accept that also, even though I prefer to move forward with it now.
But just if I want, Mr. Chairman, But the activities that you sponsored and you supported are gonna take place regardless of whether it goes into 430 or not, and the monies that you needed to support them aren't gonna be there unless we pass an amendment that you're gonna bring to 430. I mean, I just wanna put things in perspective.
The Medicaid birth issue is a long-term issue that needs to be resolved. I'd prefer that we dedicate some money to it today, but if, in the wisdom of the committee, it's determined that we should wait for the budget process, to me, that would also be acceptable. It's a long-term issue. I know that for, my neck of the woods and Senator Guida's neck of the woods, Senator Hennessey's neck of the woods is really an important issue. Hopefully the committee will recommend funding it. I'll leave that to you, Senator D.
Thank you very much, Senator B.
Further discussion? I have a question regarding the section 3 on the body worn dashboard cameras. Is this going to be set up similar to what the other proposal was, that if you have already bought body worn cameras before, that you would not be eligible? And is this fund here a matching?
I think it would be best to ask the LBA that question, but it adds $1 million to the fund that we established last year in 105D3.
Is there someone from LBA that could answer that question? Sure. Can you use the microphone, please?
So as written, this appropriation would add $1 million to the fund that was established in the last budget and the program that was established in the last budget. So it would just add resources to the already existing program.
Can you explain how the existing program works? I'm only going back because the bill that we turned down in the Senate, it was specifically trying to broaden it, and if you had participated in one of these programs before and you'd already gone out and bought this equipment, then you were not eligible.
Yeah, I can't speak to the nuance of the earlier proposal that the committee heard with Senate Bill 387 and the current. I don't know if anyone from the department is here, but I don't have those answers offhand, sorry.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Rosenwald.
Question for Senator Bradley, if he'll come back. Thank you. I guess I'm wondering why you elected to replace the hospital Medicaid rates and rather than just attach this other spending to the bottom of the bill.
There has been a lot of discussion in an off-budget year, which 2022 is, about any new appropriations. So I recognize that ongoing appropriations, the preference, I think, of this committee, and I suspect the entire Senate, is to try and limit that, even despite the fact that some of these appropriations that we've been talking about are necessary, and at least they get discussed and teed up for, if they don't get approved now, for the next budget cycle. But I think there's been a preference to try to budget for ongoing expenses in a budget year as opposed to an off-budget year. That being said, we don't always do it that way. And so there have been appropriations in the past when we've had surpluses that have happened in off-budget years. But I also recognize that that puts more of a dilemma, if you will, on the bill and its passage. And so the surplus ARPA funds that have gone, to the fiscal committee have tended to be one-time expenditures, capital infrastructure type expenditures, not exclusively, but it just seemed to me that it would be better and cleaner if we're going to focus on, you know, the overall goal, which I hope we all share, of property tax relief, to do it separately and to move the Medicaid piece into Senate Bill 430. That's why.
Senator Morse?
Senator Bradley, maybe we should have the discussion now, because I just want to make sure I'm on track here. In 401, I had an amendment that you gave to me about putting it into 430.
Yes.
Can you explain everything but the amendment you gave to me?
So the Senate Bill 401, and Henry Lipman is here, and you could bring him up. When I started out with Senate Bill 401, it was a straight, as I recall, 25% additional appropriation for all hospitals that offer Medicaid births. The department took that back and said that they wanted the ability to be able to allocate some of this funding to hospitals most in need, largely critical access hospitals that have seen birthing services curtailed. For instance, my hospital, Huggins Hospital in Wolfboro, no longer does live births except on an emergency basis. I think that's the same in District 1 and 2 and probably some of the other areas of the state too. So that was the amendment. Then there was a long amendment, part of that amendment, that established a commission to look at further recommendations on Medicaid birthing. I hope that the provision that goes into 430 will include at a minimum the funding that was proposed, and the fiscal note that the LBA prepared as of March 22nd is a $2.4 million appropriation per year, the costing of the additional stipends for the hospitals. Remember, it's Medicaid, so it's matched. So it's really a $4.8 million. The commission was something that the Department of Health and Human Services thought was necessary. I'll leave it up to the wisdom of others to determine if that should go forward. But I would hope that at a minimum, if we're not going to appropriate the $2.4 million in each year, that the other amendment that I proposed to you, which is that the department would come in with a plan that would be included in the budget, which quite frankly is going to look, I would imagine, pretty much like what they gave to the Health and Human Services Committee, which the Senate adopted a couple of weeks ago. But it would be done in a budget cycle as opposed to off budget.
Senator Morse?
Yeah. Senator Bradley, in the first 1, 2, and 3 sections, does it say anything about how that funding is gonna, is that Centene money or is that general fund money?
I believe it's general fund money.
Centene money would be general fund at this point when it gets here, but was the intention, because I thought I just read somewhere else.
Well, if you're looking at Senate Bill 430, which is a pretty,
I'm looking at Senate Bill 401,
okay,
but
I don't have the bill in front of me. I apologize for that, but
and in Senate Bill 401, there's 2 sections. I got an amendment from you that basically says that the department shall report back and do everything that this commission looks like it was gonna do.
yes.
Seems to me that part could change and your amendment probably works. The first 3 sections in this bill talk about rates and reimbursement, and then I'm reading way too many documents. I read somewhere, let me just take a look here. thought it said the, Centene funding was the funding that was gonna be used for this.
Can't listen to two people at the same time, I'm
We're
sorry.
probably both saying the same thing, so. Senator Rosenwald, can you answer my question?
Yes, I can. In an amendment that Senator Bradley had prepared for last week on Senate Bill 430, there was a section to take 2.4 million of the Centene settlement and give it to the department for the risk corridor rate project, I think it's called. It's money we owe CMS. It's really not money that can be spent on anything else. In the joint amendment that Senator Bradley and I have for today on that bill, that language is not in there anymore because it's in two other bills already. That one is in the Senate and one is in the House. So it's not necessary in Senate Bill 430, but couldn't be spent on birthing rates anyway, according to the language he was going to bring in.
Okay, so one
If
further
that
question,
helps.
Senator Bradley, on the original 401, what was the general fund spend?
The fiscal note, which I have a copy of, would be 2.4 million of general funds in 23, 2.4 in 24, and 2.4 in 25 matched. And I have a copy, if you want, of that fiscal note. And if you choose to go forward with that, if you look at the language of Senate Bill 401, you would take lines 1 through 9, and that would accomplish it. That's to me, the most important part of the bill. The study, the commission, great, but the funding for the hospitals is in lines 1 through 9.
Okay.
And
And do you or Senator Rosenwald have an issue if we deal with that in 430 instead of dealing with it in 401?
no, I hope you will deal with it in 430.
If you're asking if I'd be okay with putting this rate increase into 430 and actually the appropriation, I'd be okay with that.
That would require a break, but the reality is I think it's cleaner, so.
I would be happy with that.
So would I.
Senator Morse.
Yeah, I just like to explain what's going on here, because I know I sometimes don't articulate everything I'm watching. Right now, in 2022, we are probably fast approaching 250 million in general funds over and above what we budgeted. That doesn't include lapses or anything else, and it doesn't include 2023. I'm looking at House and Senate documents right now that have about 209 million, including Senator Bradley's amendment he has in front of him right now, of that 250. And those are all still in play. They're all in committees and headed to the floor right now. So I think this 67 million, and I'll speak to just that right now, is appropriate to send it back to the communities. But and I got to say this amendment, there's nothing that's not bipartisan. We passed 420, 412, and 398 as a House bill that were all tied to this concept that we were going to send money back to our communities. And it came to a total of 109 million. So nothing that's going on here today was by accident. It was all watching the revenue side of what was going on. Now, there are some revenue reduction things that are floating out there that I'm tracking them. They don't seem to be reducing revenues in this year, that's for damn sure. They seem to be doing just fine. So I do think it's cleaner for the Senate to send over to the House what they believe this money should be spent on. Someone's going to start to make proposals. along the way here. I mean, that's just inevitable. And I certainly believe there's another 40 million that I don't think you should spend more than 2022, but I believe there's another 40 million that's not already in some pipeline in bills that are floating through this building, that discretionary decisions can be made, and maybe we'll do that on 430, I'm not sure. But what's being proposed right now by Senator Bradley, I think is very logical. We've done this before. These are not things anybody can mickey with, no offense, but it's things that are all on systems. The 30 million, that's in a system. Whatever you got before, you're getting matched. I mean, there's nothing new about this. The 36 million, I believe there's a long list of bridges that have to be fixed in the state of New Hampshire, so it's on a list. So finance isn't deciding who goes on the list. So I think these are all pretty logical things. The cameras, quite honestly, this is because of the debate that took over an hour last week that we let go on. We haven't spent the million we have. And if it's gonna take another million to get you into the next biennium, that's the only reason I even proposed this, because, you know, I guess I'm not in the belief that it's a dire need that we haven't spent it yet, you know. But if it means that we're gonna agree to do something, you know, then I said I'll put $1 million in it so it don't run out before next year, because, I mean, obviously I wouldn't want that to happen. But I think it's pretty logical what's being proposed. And as for what we do at 430, I might have missed something here. I gotta take a quick look, but so.
Further discussion. We have before us Amendment 1253S. Seeing no further discussion, motion on this is ought to pass. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. That's on the amendment.
Second.
Senator Hennessey moves ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 401, seconded by Senator Gaida. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Should we take this out? Senator D'Alessandro, thank you.
So I did all the work and D'Alessandro's taking it out. I like that. I'm not stuck. Like, I didn't make the money. Somebody else did.
Okay, going on to Senate Bill 417.
Interim study.
Senator Gaida moves interim study, seconded by Senator Reagan. Discussion? Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moved interim study because I think we're getting ahead of ourselves with electrification of vehicles. And while I think it's a good idea, I think a study of it prior to implementing it, even a pilot program, I think is well advised. Given the supply chain fluctuations that we're experiencing globally for materials that are, shall we say, in increasingly short supply because of their sources, as well as the lack of infrastructure for supporting electric vehicles. While a good idea, I think it would bear more scrutiny and a little bit of time to make sure that it gets done right at a time when we're able to do it as a state. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion? I will also support the interim study. The fiscal note on this indicates additional staff time would be necessary, and then later it says the number of additional staff and total staff time necessary will depend on available funding. So I really have no idea as to how much additional staff is needed. I also have some concerns that were similar to a previous bill that we had come through in questioning the electronic vehicle infrastructure that gets set up. Is the expectation in these bills is that it's going to be set by the state or a private concern? So I think those things can be rectified in an interim study. Any further discussion? There being none, the motion before us is interim study on Senate Bill 417. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And motion carries 4-2. 5-2. 5-2. I'm sorry? Yeah. And I'll take that one. Senate Bill 421. Senator Rosenwald moves ought to pass. That's seconded by Senator Hennessey. And open for amendment. And I'd like to move amendment 1199S. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Gaida. What this amendment does, if you look at the original bill, reimbursement was originally set up for those that completed the course. And an amendment was made to say that reimbursement would be made for those enrolling in the course. What my amendment does is just change the enrolls in back to successfully completed. Any further discussion? Senator Rosenwald.
Yeah, just a question. If a student enrolls in the course, but then has to withdraw because of illness, for example, does that mean that the program would not get reimbursed for that student?
I would say that if they did not successfully complete the course, that they would not get reimbursed.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Reagan.
This amendment appears to be punitive, and I don't get the purpose of it.
I guess I would say that if you had somebody come out to do work at your house, the expectation is that they would finish the work before they got paid. If someone comes in and does a little bit of the work and then leaves, I doubt that most people would feel that the person should be fully compensated. And so I equate that to the same thing. If the person is coming in and taking the course, the reason they're getting reimbursed is because they have completed that task, not that they have started it and 1 week later decided they were going to drop out. Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But referencing Senator Reagan's comments, a person can take the course and not pass the course, but they completed the course. They just didn't pass the course, and not everybody passes every course. That's why they have A, B, C's, D's, E's, and F's. So I think you can't penalize a person, or you can't penalize the entity if a person failed the course. You know, there are some circumstances that exist where you just don't make it, you don't pass it, but I can see if a person drops out, you don't get paid. I mean, that's I think a legitimate reason not to pay for it. But in terms of a person could finish the course, not pass the course, but do the whole circuit, and they should get paid for that.
And I see nothing in the bill that would prohibit that. There's nothing that says that they, it says successfully completed. Now, I take that if it's an 8-week course, then they would complete all 8 weeks, whether they passed or failed. They did that. I don't read that they have to pass the course. Follow up?
Well, I think, obviously your comments are well taken, but I still think there are those who would think the opposite. That there'd be another point of view on that.
Senator Gaida?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just reminding the committee that there's an amendment coming forward from Senator Waters that would require a report on the enrollment statistics. And that if that data, I think, would be very valuable in making a determination as to whether any changes to this current system are necessary. I don't see a fiscal note that shows impact or potential impact currently or potential impact going forward. And so I don't think that delaying for years and get the data that we need to make a decision is going to cause a problem.
Senator Reagan?
I haven't dealt with the Department of Education on average daily attendance numbers. This is unmanageable suggestion that somehow we're going to, I guess we're going to have to add a position of somebody to audit each student and see how they're doing. So that becomes problematical.
Senator Gaida?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would submit that I think that the CCSNH has data on numbers of graduates, numbers of attendees, and numbers of graduates. And those numbers are not difficult to get, and I don't think they're difficult to analyze. But if we don't have a problem, we don't need to have a solution.
Further discussion? Senator Rosenwald?
Thank you. So knowing that these are high school students who are not living independently, a student who enrolls in a class and then their family moves in the middle of the term, still the system would not be reimbursed for that student?
I would say that the way that it's written, that they would not be compensated because they did not complete the course. I think we can give many different examples. I mean, if there's a desire to add something in for exceptions, because I think you can come up with any number of scenarios. But I just do not agree with the policy that if somebody enrolls in something and then drops out, which I think is probably more common than a family moving, that the state should be reimbursing. Further discussion? There being none, the motion before us is ought to pass on Amendment 1199S. All those in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
No.
And you're, no. Okay, the motion fails. 3 to 4. Open for another motion. Well, we have actually another amendment. Senator Rosenwald moves Amendment 1085S. Second by Senator Gaida. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Senator Hennessey moves ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 421, seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. And Senator Rosenwald? Okay, Senate Bill 430. Senator Rosenwald moves ought to pass. That's seconded by Senator Hennessey. And we have a series of amendments. Senator Bradley, is your amendment the only one that, from 401? Is that the only thing or did you want to talk about the whole bill?
Thank you, Senator Daniels. Happy to try to answer any questions about the whole bill. The department's here. It's their bill. I filed for them. I'm happy to talk about 401 again, although I think we've covered it.
Okay.
There's a Rosenwald Bradley amendment that Senator Rosenwald outlined previously too.
Okay, so if are there any questions regarding the 401 transfer? Senator Morse.
Senator Bradley, if I take the amendment 1249, which I guess is under my name, no, wrong one. If I take the one that's under your name, 1250, that takes care of all the study committee. Lines 1 through 9 takes care of the program you're trying to put in place. I can't see where there's an appropriation.
There's no specific appropriation in the Senate passed version of lines 1 through 9, but the fiscal analysis of increasing those services is outlined in the fiscal note that I talked about before, which is a $2.4 million general fund impact.
So if I move amendment 1250 with lines 1 through 9 attached to it, I'd accomplish what you're trying to.
I'm not sure, is 1250 the plan? If you move,
1250 was the one where you basically replaced the study committee with the department having the report.
you don't need to do both. If you move lines 1 through 9, you don't need to do the other.
Okay. I don't know how the committee feels, but I think you can afford the 2.4 million just by him.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, I think we're done with the 401 part. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll recognize Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. And I've just been reminded from someone who's in the ether that we all have to turn our microphones on when we speak. I didn't mention any names. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This joint amendment from Senator Bradley and me takes a number of provisions that the department wanted in, and I can go through it, that might be
Yeah,
easier.
if you can suspend for one moment. Senator Rosenwald moves amendment 1215S. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Gaida.
Thank you.
Senator Rosenwald?
Okay, so the first part, starting on line 3, the department wanted to add reporting on the pilot program that's in the underlying bill. But I wanted to get the report also sent to the House and Senate Finance Committees because it's relevant on both cost and policy of the pilot program. So what's different about this section is just the addition of House and Senate Finance Committees. That is Roman V on page 1. Starting on line 15, that came from Senator Bradley's larger amendment that he didn't offer. And I would not be able to speak to that. That is also true for page 2, section 7. That was worked out between Senator Bradley and the department and seems non-controversial. Starting on line 22, section 36, those of us who are also on the fiscal committee remember that we approved the creation of 6 non-classified positions at Hampstead Hospital. But the department also was asking that we create 6 non-classified positions in this bill. So the new language of section 36 just basically says when those new positions that are created legislatively are online, we'll get rid of the ones we created in fiscal so we're not double creating positions. We're just swapping out non-classified for unclassified. And I have to say that until about 3 weeks ago, I didn't even know there were unclassified positions. So I'm always learning. Section 72 that starts on line 33 of page 2 was something that Senator Bradley worked out with the department, and those are the changes that he and I are suggesting to Senate Bill 430.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the amendment? Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reference section 36, line 22, page 2. I noticed that it says once they've replaced the unclassified for or the non-classified with unclassified, they shall seek the elimination of the 6 non-classified positions. That, to me, indicates the possibility of retaining them. Should we make that language stronger?
Well, our intent was to eliminate them, so if the committee wants to just say the department shall eliminate, that would be okay with me, and I hope would be okay with Senator Bradley and the department.
I would so move.
Okay. Senator Gaida,
Committee amendment.
yes. Is there any objection from the committee on removing the word shall?
I think it's a
Seek
good
the-
idea.
Shall eliminate.
Any further discussions on Amendment 1215? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries. It's
Thank
open
you.
for further amendment. I'd like to move amendment 1103S. And this amendment simply replaces some wording that was a little bit convoluted, because it had stated down, starting on line 6, Medicaid services to establish and provide preventative health care benefits under the state Medicaid program, including but limited to nicotine cessation, transitional care. The including but limited to didn't make any sense. So this just takes out that wording, including but limited to, and replaces it with for. Any questions or discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. And I would also like to bring forward Amendment 1104S. Need a motion? Yes. I'll move that. Is there a second? Second by Senator Gaida. This amendment has to do with, I don't remember exactly what section it was that talked about the look-back period. The bill proposes to move the look-back period to 3 years from 5 years. And my amendment keeps the look-back period at 5 years. I mean, if we look at page 7 of the bill as amended by the Senate, down on line 33. If you Googled long-term care look-back period, you'll find that 99.9% of the time it comes up talking about a five-year period. My background is in insurance. I'm an insurance agent. I'm certified in long-term care. When I went through the testing for the certification, it was all about a 5-year look-back period, not 3 years. And, you know, I submit to you that this was done, and actually, and I believe, based on prior testimony, that it was actually done in New Hampshire first to move it to 5 years, and that was adopted by the federal government in the Deficit Reduction Act in 2005 and 2006 to keep it at 60 months. And the reason was that they did not want people playing games. To have, you know, a $500,000 house, and then 4 years out, you sell the house for $5 to your child, and then claim that you have to go on Medicaid, and there's only a 3-year look-back period, and because you don't find anything in that 3 years because you've given away all your assets, then you're eligible to get on when you had those assets to begin with. You know, the idea behind long-term care is that the state is there as a backup for you in case you don't have the assets of doing or paying for the long-term care, which, you know, can easily run in excess of $100,000 in southern New Hampshire. What this proposes, though, is that there is a better mindset if somebody is looking to go on Medicaid, to tell them that, you know, we need to have a 5-year look-back period to look at your assets over those 5 years. If they get 3 years into it, and it's obvious that these people have been destitute and have been for some time, then my understanding is that there is a 541A waiver that can be granted that could allow this person to go on Medicaid at 3 years. In that particular case, I'm sure the individual would be happy that they would be able to get on at 3 years as opposed to waiting 5. On the flip side of that, someone going into that and you're told you've got 3 years that we have to look at back, and then 2.5 years into it, they find something that now they're going to come back and say, well, no, we have to stretch that out to 5 years. Now the person is not very happy because now they have to wait twice as long. And I think what we want to do is to provide the needs, fill the needs for the people, but doing so in a way that they're not playing games with the state. I mean, long-term care insurance is available to people. Obviously, the younger you get it, the less expensive it is. But New Hampshire also has a long-term care partnership that came in with the Deficit Reduction Act, meaning that if you went out and you picked up long-term care and let's say a couple $100,000 worth of it, and you got to the point where you needed to go into a nursing home, you spent that $200,000. That partnership says, because you were responsible enough to pick up that in the begin with, we're not going to ask for those $200,000 worth of assets back in the spend down process. We're going to let you keep that to do whatever you want. So I think the parts are in place, and I believe that what my amendment does is to bring uniformity to the 60 months in going forward. And so that is my proposal. Any questions or comments? Senator Hennessey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, line 5, your amendment says to the extent permissible under federal law. So if federal law changes to 36 months or 38 months or 48 months, then that's what New Hampshire law would be? Is that your understanding of your amendment?
I believe that federal law in some cases right now has 36. There are others that are 60. I think what it's saying here is that if it's permissible under federal law, so state law is always able to make it more restrictive. So that's why we have the 5-year here, and you've got a variation at the federal law. But I guess if the federal law were to take away the 60 months and go totally to 36 months, I guess we would have to make changes to our law to be in sync with those.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Gaida.
Looking at it from a consumer perspective, I would think that the 60 months would be better in terms of estate planning purposes going forward. As you said earlier, if you plan 36 months and then they look back to 60, you're going to be digging through records and stuff, whereas ahead of time, if you know it's 60, your preparations with your attorney, your accountant, or your own personal family can predispose towards 60 months and be pleasantly surprised under unfortunate circumstances, no doubt. That is actually, that comes down to 36.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, motion before us is ought to pass on Amendment 1104S. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries.
We have to pass it again.
Senator Hennessey.
Thank you. I have a committee amendment I would like to make.
Yes.
First, just a reminder, I am on the board of a critical access hospital in the North Country. And keeping that in mind as well, I would like to move lines 1 through 9 of SB 401 as originally amended by the Senate and put that into SB 430. And I'll speak to that.
Senator Hennessey moves lines 1 through 9 in Senate Bill 401 be moved as an amendment into Senate Bill 430. That's seconded by Senator Morse. Senator Hennessey, you're recognized.
Thank you. So thank you to Senator Morse for recognizing the importance of this. Thank you to Senator Bradley for originally sponsoring this bill. Right now, I think it's maybe 40% of the northern part of New Hampshire. You have 2 options to have a baby in the state. One's in Littleton and one's in Berlin. So I appreciate the committee recognizing that this is an important thing that we need to look at so we don't see more hospitals close their labor and delivery services.
Thank you. Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I totally support this amendment, but I wonder if the committee would consider a further amendment to appropriate $2.4 million of general funds with prior approval of fiscal to accept the federal funds not necessary for fiscal year '23, so that we're not asking the department to cut another program to fund this rate increase.
I'd second that.
Senator Hennessey.
Yes, I would consider that a friendly amendment to my amendment.
Okay. And that's all seconded by Senator D'Alessandro. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of the motion on Senator Hennessy's amendments, committee amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. Senator Gaida moves ought to pass as amended. That's seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Any discussion?
It's even greater now that it's funded. Right. Hold
Okay,
on.
there being no discussion, all those in favor of the ought to pass as amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Who would like to take this one out? Senator Rosenwald. Okay. Senate Bill 445. Senator Hennessy moves ought to pass. Second. I think Senator Morse second. Discussion.
We have an amendment somewhere.
We do have an amendment.
We want to make sure we move the most up-to-date amendment, so I don't know which one.
What's the, is that 1140?
Do we have the new amendment to this?
Oh,
I thought that there was one after that,
There's-
but not in amendment form.
no, there's one beyond 1140.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Oh, thank you.
yes, it should
There's
come
some
out.
copies on the table here.
Okay. No, we have this one. This is 1140.
Do you want this one back?
I think there was one that was not drawn up to amendment form. I believe that that's the one we were talking about.
That's the one. 1257.
Where is it? What's the number?
1257 just came off the printer.
Do we have it? Okay.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for that, why don't we go on to Senate Bill 452?
I move out to pass.
Second.
Senator D'Alessandro moves ought to pass on Senate Bill 452, and that's seconded by Senator Rosenwald. And the chair recognizes Senator Rosenwald for an amendment.
Thank you. I'd like to move amendment 1213S, and I'd like to speak to it, please.
Senator Rosenwald moves Amendment 1213S. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Rosenwald, you're recognized.
Thank you. Senator D'Alessandro's underlying bill made two changes to the current testing for lead in drinking water in schools and in childcare. And first, it lowered the allowable parts per billion in the water, but the Energy Committee changed his second half of the bill to talk about when that new standard would be applicable. And they moved it back from testing that has already been underway since 2016 or 19, really. They moved it out to 2022. But during the last 3 years, 22,000 tests have been conducted in public schools in New Hampshire. And the way the Energy Committee amended the bill, all of those test results would essentially be thrown out because it would have to be 3 tests conducted after 2022. So this amendment preserves the 22,000 tests that have already been conducted and changes on lines 4 and 7 the date of 2022 back to 2016, which was part of his original bill. That's all it does. So most schools have done one test already. It's over 90%. This would require all those schools to start all over again, which seems like a waste of money and also delays any action by 2 more years, at least.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? I did have a question. I know you and I have talked about licensed childcare facilities having access to funds, I think, for testing. Did we ever determine whether they did or did not?
I think that they do. I'm not exactly remembering whether it was the $1.6 million we had appropriated in the previous budget or where, but very few childcare facilities have already started testing their water. Most schools have, but I think it's around a quarter of childcare facilities have not yet started testing. As we know, that licensed childcare capacity in New Hampshire went down by about 50% since the start of the pandemic, so childcare facilities continue to struggle. There are zero-interest loans available to them in the lead paint hazard remediation fund. It also will allow for childcare facilities to remediate lead in their water, but they have not been applying for those funds. But the remediation funds are available. Testing, I think so, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Any further discussion? We're on Amendment 1213S. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion ought to pass on Amendment 1213S, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Move the bill as amended.
Senator D'Alessandro moves ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 452, seconded by Senator Reagan. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Senator D'Alessandro?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we need time to look over the 1257 amendment? Or- Yes.
Mr. Chair, is there somebody from BEA that could talk to us about this amendment?
Anyone from BEA? Did you want to contact somebody?
I will contact them after this.
Okay. So we're on Senate Bill 445. Yes.
Move up to pass on amendment 1257.
Senator Reagan moves ought to pass on Senate Bill 445. Is there a second? Second by Senator Rosenwald. Senator Reagan moves Amendment 1257S. Is there a second? Second by Senator Hennessey. Discussion. Senator Hennessey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having just received this amendment, I am willing to vote in favor of this. However, I will be checking with BEA to make sure that the wording in this amendment doesn't sacrifice the $122 million in federal funds that we will be receiving. Additionally, that it doesn't make ineligible any projects or municipalities or political subdivisions of any counties or whatever may already be undertaking with the anticipation of these matching funds. And if that happens, I will be bringing a floor amendment.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, we're voting on Amendment 1257S. All those in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. 6-0. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
I'll move on to pass the amendment.
Senator Gaida moves ought to pass as amended,
Second.
seconded by Senator Hennessy. Any discussion?
Just a proviso that Senator Hennessy brought forth. We'll get a further amplification of that when you check it out.
Yes, I'll let you know Thursday.
Good.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Senator
Sorry,
Anderson.
Mr. Chair. My hope is that the department will get back to me with their approval or concerns about this amendment. And if there's no concerns, then I will not be bringing a floor amendment on Thursday. But if there are concerns, I will be bringing a floor amendment. And if they can't get done in time, then I will bring an amendment to my bill when it gets presented in the House.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. For any further discussion? Motion before us is ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 445. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Did you want to take that? Senator Hennessy will take that out. And our last one is Senate Bill 458. Senator Hennessey moves ought to pass on Senate Bill 458. That's seconded by Senator Rosenwald. Senator Hennessey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have heard from many people on this bill. I think that they've reached out to me with the concern that I had voted against the amendment on the floor last week. I am in support of making sure that we put these kids in an appropriate facility to help rehabilitate them that is safe and effective, but also that it's done in a timely manner. I still have concerns about the timeliness factor. Unfortunately, I didn't work on this. I wasn't on the subcommittee that worked on this, or the study committee, and I wasn't on the policy committee that this went to, and I haven't had time to come up with an appropriate amendment that puts in my concerns and possibly reporting requirements, especially if the date in 2024 is going to be surpassed by the department to build a facility. I also have this being the finance committee, I have a finance issue with the bill, especially if the facility is not going to be done by 2026, when this bill, as it's written, extends out the option. And if it's not going to be completed by 2026, then our appropriation of ARPA funds will not be able to be used for that facility. So in this discussion, I'm hoping to take these concerns of mine to the House, and I hate to put on them to fix something that I believe is not appropriate right now, but I would like to propose a committee amendment of changing the appropriation. Sorry, I have to find that line.
Page 3, line 8.
Thank you. Page 3, line 8, changing the $15 million to $1, recognizing that that's a holding spot for the committee that's going to be reviewing this bill, and I will bring my concerns to the policy committee that looks at this in the House.
Thank you. Senator Rosenwald.
I share everything that Senator Hennessey just said. All of the people I've heard from, plus I share her concerns. I would add one other, not that I'm suggesting anything at this point, but I still feel like 18 beds is too big, considering we currently have 8 children who are at this Sununu Center. I understand why you can't build a facility of 8, but 18, a ceiling of 18 seems high, but that's something we could discuss in the House. But I guess I wanted to ask Senator Hennessey if she was planning to bring a floor amendment with that reporting language, because I would be happy to be on it with you if you were.
Mr. Chair, thank you. My son's 14th birthday is today. And I'm trying to spend more time. But if there's something.
We'll catch up later.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the facility itself is located in Manchester, and I think we have in the past disposed of property on the facility. We got rid of a couple of houses, and we got rid of a particular building that was constructed for female delinquents. Those parcels were sold and have been converted into, in 2 instances, residential property. In the 3rd instance, it was purchased by a Jewish community organization in use. Okay, so those things are in place as we speak. You've got maybe almost 100 acres of land there, probably the most expensive property, if not in the state, damn close to it. So the disposal of the property and what's going to happen there obviously it will be a concern to Manchester and to the residents of the area. So I think it's very appropriate that Manchester be part and parcel of this situation. With regard to the number of beds, I think, you know, we talk about 18 beds, you talk about 14 beds, you talk about 12 beds. I think that's up to in my opinion, it's up to those who are specializing in this area to make those decisions, because those should be in the best interest of the population that we're serving. And time constraints are important. We know we need something, and we know we need something in an expeditious fashion and certainly in an appropriate manner. So I think all of those things have to be concerned. But this thing has been around, and this discussion has been around for a long period of time. And we're pushing it one way, pushing it another way. I think the long drawn-out process isn't good for anybody. So I would hope that what we do here entices the House to do their due diligence and to get something done that's appropriate, that's workable, and that serves the community that needs that service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Director Ripson, would you take questions? I know that as we went through the study committee, we came up with the 18 beds because that was the directive in House Bill 2. And I also understood the department to say that the separation had to be by gender and by needs, and I think there was another thing also. So is 18 beds really unreasonable, seeing as how the separations need to take place and there's fluctuation each day?
Sure. So for the record, Joe Ripsum, Director, DCYF. Thank you for your question, Senator. Yeah, the number 18 comes from looking at the data over the last few years. The average daily census at SYSC has gone from 70s to 50s to 12 last year. Today we have, I believe, 12 kids in the facility. Last week we had 14 kids in the facility. I do have some data around the fluctuation over the years if folks are interested in that. The number 18 comes from the idea, not that we ever anticipate having 18 kids in the facility at a time, but exactly as you said, the need to have flexibility in terms of separation of kids based on gender, based on the individual needs of the youth. Sometimes you have youth who are, more aggressive and might be targeting another youth, and you need to be able to separate those youth. Sometimes you have youth who are involved in common criminal activities, and the court orders that they be separated. So basically it's for those core three reasons, the two that you mentioned, Senator, and the one additional of if there's court involvement saying that we should separate two kids. With that, it's hard to build a facility that's for the exact number of, say, 12 without having the flexibility to move kids based on what's happening in the facility at a given time. Sometimes you have, past 2 years, we've had times where we've had 0 girls. Past 2 months, we've had times where we've had 7 girls. That's the most number of girls we've had in years there. And so we need to have some flexibility in terms of moving kids to different units and such.
Thank you. Senator Guida?
The question, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, despite the fluctuating numbers of residents at whatever the center may be, does that necessitate keeping a certain level of staff for the specialty services?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we try to staff in terms of what we call the milieu staff or the frontline staff, is you want at least 2 staff per unit that's operating at a given time. Typically you're running 2 units at this point, sometimes 3, and then you need another staff person to manage the central control. You've seen the facility, you've seen the central control area, Senator. And then there's other kind of specialty services, right? So education for kids, nursing care for kids, clinicians for kids, psychologist who works down there to work with these kids. Many of the young people who are coming in today are coming in with a real high level of behavioral health care needs. And ultimately, a lot of those kids will move out of SYSC once we're able to figure out what's happening there and move them into a bit different facility, often a more appropriate facility. But you need to have that type of diagnostic support to figure out where the right place is for a young person to go and to stabilize them. And we've had young people who come in Unfortunately, there's nowhere else for them to go. We've had young people who've come in who are acutely psychotic following an incredibly horrific violent episode, and there's nowhere else to stabilize them in the state. So we have a psychiatrist that comes in and stabilizes those young people on one of our units, separated from the other kids. We need that type of space to make that type of situation work.
Follow up?
I suppose I will ask the question that I think everyone is concerned about. Would it be more cost-effective to privatize the provision of these services, the HHS oversight, okay, to facilities where the baseline cost of maintaining facility and staff is not singular to the state or to the state's residents thereof?
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces to that. I think one, my own view, I believe the department's view, is from a policy perspective, privatizing the one facility we have in the entire state for every detained and committed kids is a high risk proposition. We've had facilities, an SUD facility that we stood up for a discrete purpose that failed. If this program fails, there is nowhere else to go. During COVID, we experienced lots of our residential programs closing their doors or limiting their admissions. SYSC never did that. We pulled in JPPOs, CPSWs, had plans to bring in other folks if we absolutely needed to make sure that no matter what was happening, we were able to serve those kids. So I have a very high level of concern from a policy perspective that you're taking a big risk by privatizing the one and only facility for this purpose in the state. Secondarily, I'm not sure that the savings would actually be real. The cost that Vermont came up with when they were going to try to privatize their facility, which they've closed their facility without an alternative for 3 years now, trying to get their private facility open. They're sending kids to SYSC. We actually had to close the doors on them for a while because we wanted to make sure we could serve New Hampshire kids first. Their anticipated cost was a little over $1,700 a day. They're currently paying us a little over $1,700 a day for the kids that we take for them, and that's roughly what it costs to serve a kid at SYSC. We do think with a smaller facility, we could have a smaller footprint of staff, and that would actually end up making the average daily cost of SYSC go down from what it currently is. But currently, SYSC being this massive facility with people spread out all over the place and lots of overhead costs in terms of other buildings, other property, all of this maintenance cost, cost to heat a giant building instead of a smaller building, all of those things add to the daily operational cost of SYSC.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at it from the other side, has consideration been given, and is it legal within the Medicaid or whatever rules apply for us to market our new service, providing we build this phenomenal structure, okay, to other states? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so Medicaid can never be used for detained or committed youth or adults. That's just a plain Medicaid rule. So there's no Medicaid option. Currently at SYSC, we do have a small contract with Vermont to serve some kids. As I said, we had to close the door to that during the winter when things got tough, but we did reopen that door, and we have a couple kids from Vermont there today. There might be a market for that in a new facility, but that's not what we've anticipated when we kind of figured out our size. So if that was something we were going to anticipate doing, we'd want to think about the size of the facility to do that.
Any further discussion? Senator Hennessey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm still waiting on a second to my proposed committee amendment.
Okay, it's seconded by Senator Guida. Any further discussion? Okay, we're on the proposed Hennessey amendment, committee amendment, which I think Senator Rosenwald also had some input on. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. We're down, any further amendments? Is there?
Second.
Senator Rosenwald moves ought to pass as amended. That's seconded by Senator D'Alessandro. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries, and I'll take that out. Okay, with that, we have completed our business within executive session. I'll take a motion to come out.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Guida, seconded by Senator D'Alessandro. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. And having completed our business today, we will be adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Reagan, you did it great today.